Welcome to the Careers by Jenn podcast, episode 171. Today on the podcast, Jenn speaks with Dr. Colby Jubenville on how to develop the relational leader inside of you. I suggest beginning by creating an authentic and positive relationship with that leader, perhaps with a fruity drink on a beach in Hawaii.
You're listening to the Careers by Jenn podcast with me, Jen Swanson, the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. Today's show has to do with becoming a relational leader or finding that relational leader inside you. Have you ever had a boss that you just couldn't connect with, or a manager, somebody who had trouble relating to you, that you had trouble connecting with, and it made it that much more difficult to have that person as a supervisor? And what if you are that supervisor? What if you are the person who has to manage other people or supervise other people, and you're having trouble making authentic and real connections with those people? I've had both of those kinds of managers and supervisors, and I've had trouble connecting with people that I've been supervising in some cases as well. And so our guest today, Dr. Colby Jubenville, is going to help us with this subject and teach us how to be more relational in our leadership and to find that relational leader within you. Dr. Jubenville is an accomplished author, an international speaker, a professor, a business advisor, an entrepreneur, and an inventor. He holds an academic appointment at Middle Tennessee State University as a special assistant to the Dean for Student Success and Strategic Partnerships in the College of Behavioral and Health Sciences. Colby Jubenville also speaks regularly on his books. He's got a book called Me, How to Sell Who You Are, What You Do, and Why You Matter to the World. And another book called Zebras and Cheetahs, Look Different and Stay Agile to Survive in the Business Jungle. And he speaks all over the world, and he uses coaching, and he consults, and he just has a whole lot on the go. And so he is a fantastic guest for our show today. And so I'm going to turn you over to our conversation right after this break. Do you want someone to listen? Do you need help setting goals for yourself? Do you want someone to keep you accountable for your progress and to ask good questions that will help to move you toward your success? Have you got a resume that you want reviewed or updated? Do you need help deciding what kind of work you'd like to transition into? If any of these sound like you, I've got some coaching spaces open at Careers by Jenn, and I would be happy to work with you to achieve your goals. From a single session resume review to multi-session career or life coaching, there are several packages to choose from. Go to careersbyjenn.com, click on online programs, and you will see the coaching packages on the courses page. Select your package, and let's get started on your future today. Dr. Colby Jubenville, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jim, thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me be part of your audience, and thanks for the opportunity to share some of the things I've learned along the way that hopefully will be valuable to the people you connect with. So thank you.
Wonderful. Well, before we get into our topic today, let's just find out about you. What brought you to this point in your career and all of the multiple things you seem to be doing? I've looking on your website, and it looks like there are a dozen things that you do.
Yes, I have ADD, so I am happiest when I'm doing multiple things multiple times. And so, I was born to two educators that taught me the way you take on the world is to become an educator, marry an educator, and educate other people. And I think that works all the way up until you want these things called lifestyle and freedom. and so, at some point along the way, you start to ask yourself, what is it that you really want? And I think in our 20s, we're taught to get in the game. In our 30s, we're taught to move up in the game. In our 40s, we try to stay in the game because those 30-year-olds are so damn good. In our 50s, we say, what is it that I really want? And so that moment for me happened at St. Paul's School in Mobile, Alabama. And I'll talk about that at some point here in our discussion, our time together today. But all I've ever wanted to do was coach and teach on an ever-increasing stage. And so to have the opportunity to be with you today, to share some of the things that I've learned really through my own experience, more than anything else, is representative of what I really want, which is to coach and teach on this ever-increasing stage. And so I do a lot of things. I write books, I speak, I consult. You know the old saying, there's an old saying about college professors, and I'm going to let you finish it because everybody gets a good laugh out of this, but they say those who can do and those who can't what?
Teach.
Right?
I
Yeah.
was a college professor for 23 years, so there you go.
Yeah. And those who can't teach PE. So that's the old Woody Allen joke. But there's, I listened to that for years. I would listen to this idea of, those who can do and those who can't teach. And so I sat down one day and I said, but if you can do and teach, you get paid for your value and not your time. And I think we live in this new economic age where if you'll truly tap into voice, which to me, voice is the intersection of talent and passion and conscience and need in the world, and really understand what that is for you and how you find that voice, I think that's the first step in getting paid for your value and not your time. And so sometimes I wonder if I chose this or it chose me, but at the end of the day, I get to coach and teach on that ever increasing stage. And if that's speaking, if it's consulting, if it's coaching, if it's teaching at MTSU, it's all those things of coaching and teaching that I really find joy in doing.
So you found your passion, have you?
Well, and I think that we've beaten that idea in North America. I think we've beaten that idea down. I don't think it's about passion necessarily anymore. I mean, people will tell you they're passionate. To me, passion is what would you drive 3 states over to talk about for free? That's passion. But to me, it's more than passion. It's what are you naturally curious about? What are you naturally curious about? I have always been curious about what forces are at play that allows one person to become more successful or more engaged, more influential, more powerful, whatever the word is, more whatever. I've always been interested about what are the forces at work that allow that to happen and that make that happen, and how can we understand those forces? How can we tap into those forces? And how can we use those things in our day-to-day life?
So if we're talking today about developing the relational leader inside of you, I firmly believe you can be a leader in any role. So anyone listening, whether you're going into a formal management role or leadership role or not, how do you begin to develop that sense of relational leadership inside you?
Yeah. There's 2 kinds of leaders, and I think about the leader brushing their teeth in the morning, and leader 1 is brushing their teeth and they're thinking about tasks, and it's the tasks that they have to get done, and they have this list in their head, and they believe that the tasks are more important than people, and more important than culture, and more important than team. And then leader 2 is a leader. He's brushing his teeth or she's brushing her teeth, and she's thinking about the fact that she's a leader on a team defining culture, and that everything gets done through relationships. And so the minute that you subscribe from being task-based leader to relational-based leader, the minute that you do that, there's this fundamental shift that takes place. And you ask me, where does it start? To me, it starts with trust. And so, we say these things. Jenn and I are in this relationship, and hey, Jenn, I trust you and you trust me and we trust each other. We got to trust the process. Well, that all sounds great, but what does it really mean? And in reality, if you look at trust, I started to ask myself these foundational questions like, what is the foundation of trust? And so I kept coming back to this one idea that the foundation of trust is safety. And safety in business is, am I known? Am I heard? Am I valued? Am I important? Does my opinion matter? And so those people that want to become relational based leaders are ones that sit down with people and say, it's really important that we together define what trust looks like. And to me, the foundation of trust is safety. And on this team, I want you to know that my role as the leader, because good leaders make good followers and leaders go first, my role to build this container of trust is to establish that I am here so that you can be known, heard, valued, important, and your opinions matter. I think that's where the relational leader starts.
So what happens if you're coming into a place where there's been a history of little or no trust, or trust that's been betrayed, and people are really skeptical, and you've walked into this and now you've got to start building? What do you do?
It's a good question. My favorite movie is Jerry Maguire. And when I ask people what's the greatest piece from the movie, they all say the same thing. They say, show me the money. And it's not the greatest piece. The greatest piece is when he's writing the mission statement. And if you go back to that moment in that movie, The Who is playing in the background. And he said, I became my father's son again, which is such a powerful, powerful moment. But the name of the mission statement was the things we think and do not say, the future of our business. And what I think has to happen, Collins says it this way in Good to Great. He says, we have to do an autopsy without blame. We have to face the brutal facts. And so however you want to frame that up, I like the Jerry Maguire version. It says the things we think and do not say, the future of our business. When I go out and speak all over the country, I'll just take little 3x5 note cards and I will put them out there and I'll just say, here, watch this clip. And then they watch it. I'll say, now write on this card the things that you think and you don't want to say, because it will become the future of your business. And the more we can talk about these things, the more we can face the brutal facts, the more we can do an autopsy without blame, the better chance we have at really ultimately becoming who we're supposed to become as a company, individually and collectively.
And so that's where you begin, as with
I
that.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I think, the people in Hollywood get paid to write lines for a reason, because they're damn good at it. And so for somebody to come up with this idea of the things we think and do not say, the future of our business, you can't say it any better than that. Think about if we took that in higher education. Think about if we took that in healthcare. Think about if we took that in infrastructure. Think about that in politics. In politics, here's what we say in politics. If you turn on any newspaper, turn on any television show, any media, if you pick up any newspaper, here's what it says. This is what you should be afraid of, and this is who you should blame. And those ideas find their ways and creep right up to the kitchen table in our very lives. They find their ways in the workplace. We spend most of our time in the workplace saying, who should I be afraid of and who should I blame? And to say that does not have any kind of impact on the way that we live, love, work, parent, whatever, is just absolutely foolish.
So we start with trust. We start with building trust and building relationship. What's next?
Well, if we go through that framework, so everything that I do, do you know the shortest story in the history of mankind? It was written by an American author. Do you know it?
No.
If you get this right, I'll send you a book. I'm going to send you a book. I've written 2 books. I tell people all the time, I think my books are great, but I'm a little biased, but covers are awesome. So, judge the book. One's lime green and the other one looks like a hat show print out of Nashville. So they're really cool. But, and they look really good on a coffee table. So I'll send you a couple.
Excellent.
You can
Excellent.
You can hand them out. You can be my Canadian representative. But if you look at the framework, and so the shortest story in the history of mankind is written by Hemingway, For Sale, Baby Shoes, Never Worn.
Right.
I wrote my 10th grade book report on that because it was 6 words: For Sale, Baby Shoes, Never Worn. And so when I read that, I thought to myself, we need to learn to communicate in that way, in very simple, efficient, predictive ways that people have structure and can move through a process pretty quickly. And so I started to build frameworks. And so that trust is a framework. And so if the bottom of that, if the foundation is safety, and then there's trust, then what comes next is open and honest, then transparency, and then vulnerability. And so people throw these buzzwords around like, we want to be fully transparent. You cannot be fully transparent until you feel safe with somebody. You can't have trust with somebody until you feel safe with them. The guy that I learned all this from is a guy named Warren Brent, Brent Consulting Group out of Nashville. And, I still remember the first time I met with Warren when I got done after about 2 hours of meeting with him. And Warren has a background in therapy. And his background is in very much grounded in therapeutic approaches to people. And he just stood up and he said, Colby, I just don't know what to do with you. I'll see you next time. And I was like, what?
And he charged you?
No, I work with him.
Oh.
But for him, see, here, Jen, here's the cool point. He established such safety with me and such trust in 2 hours that he was able to stand up and go, and Warren's like 6'7", 6'6". He goes, I just don't know what to do with you. And when I walked out, you know what I said to myself? My mother told me that my whole life. Colby, people just don't know what to do with you. Now, how powerful is in that one meeting that he established such a container of trust that we were able to have that kind of productive of a conversation that led to so many other opportunities for both of us. That's where we've got to get to as the relational leader. And early in our careers, architects aren't taught how to be relational. They're taught how to do tasks. I work with architects. I work with, one of the largest building companies in the United States, construction companies in the United States. They're task-driven people. We don't teach people how to build relationships, when in reality, it is the key piece in how all of this, how work gets done. Jim Rohn says it best. He said, you can have the right people, you can have the right time, you can have the right energy, you can have the right opportunity. But if you don't have the right philosophy to drive the work that must get done, then nothing will get done. And so I said to myself, okay, so then what is philosophy? If we're going to understand it in that context, what is it? And to me, I wrote down, it's the most basic form of human understanding. Well, to me, that's a relationship. For me to be in a relationship with Jen, I have to understand her first. We don't do that. We don't teach people to do that.
Is it because we feel that we don't have the time that it takes to build relationship? I mean, it takes time, it's work, it's hard upfront, front end loaded work.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I know that you've been in relationships where you can feel it. I started a football team in 1998. No phones, no computers, no players, no uniforms, just a dream. We ended up 21st in the nation, I think, towards the end. Small college football. And this guy named Norman Joseph hired me. And I was 28, just finishing up my PhD, heard about this program and that they were starting this program. And I said to myself, I'm going to be the first college football coach with a PhD. So I called this guy, Norman Joseph, and I said, Norman, my name's Colby Jubenville. You don't know me, but I know I can help you win football games, build championships, build a program at the school. And so I called him every day for about 45 days.
Every day.
Every day. I call him. I'd pace the floors. I'd practice what I was going to say. I'd get the answer machine. Never called me back. He finally called me back. He goes, Colby, I don't know who you are, son, but you sure have some serious perseverance. I'll meet you at the Waffle House in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And so he said, come there and tell me everything you know about coaching offensive line. Well, I didn't play offensive line in college because I didn't want to learn the plays. In defense, we had 4 defenses. That's all we had to run. So now I'm in serious jeopardy because I have to go to this guy and convince him. So could you imagine? I mean, your whole audience there is about building your career and, you know, getting work that you love, and part of that obviously is the interview process. And so imagine doing an interview, and then imagine doing your first interview in your life for real at a Waffle House. It's like interviewing at a Exxon bathroom. It's just gross. I mean, there's you know the feeling of it. And so we go through. He orders this double covered chunk diced hamburger, and I order water because I'm scared to death. And we get to the end, and he said, "Well, Colby, you obviously know nothing about coaching offensive line." And I said, "No, I really don't." And he said, "But I do think you can help us recruit the right people and win championships." And I said, "I know I can. And Coach, if you'll give me the shot, then I promise you, then I'll deliver." And you talked about passion. He said, "I can't pay you for another 6 months. The budget cycle doesn't start then, but I need you to start tomorrow." And I showed up and I did it. And it changed my life. Now, I share all that with you to say this. I'll never forget. I will never forget what he said to me. When I showed up at his office at 4:30 in the morning on a Tuesday with a cup of coffee. We sat down there, and he said, "Colby, my only job here is to help you take the next step." Man, the minute he said that, for me, I worked 20 hours a day for 2 years. And when I went and finally realized that I could not coach other people my entire life, that I wanted to coach my kids and I would not be away from them, I cried.
I bet.
Yeah. So I think the more we can have those kinds of moments, the more, I mean, do you know who Brene Brown is? Do you watch any of this stuff?
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah. I was listening to Brene when Brene wasn't cool. So I was kind of a trendsetter there. But Brene says vulnerability smells a lot like truth and feels a lot like courage, and neither of that's about weakness. And I can remember reading that, listening to that, processing that very early on, and saying, I'm going to be vulnerable with other people no matter what, and they can choose whether or not they want to have the relationship. That's where the relationship really starts.
And yet, we've been trained all this time to, leaders need to be strong, and they need to be be in charge. And so is there a shift happening with this idea of being more collaborative and more vulnerable? Is there a shift, or is this just a different way of coming at the same thing?
Well, I think we live in a world, in a society where we're not taught to collaborate. We're taught to compete. And I can still remember, at that high school that I told you I went to, I'd sit out in the hall. I'd say, well, look, hey, if you can do the English, I'll do the math, and we can switch it up, and you can use my English and I'll use your math. I thought that was collaboration. They call it competing. And so, I think it's always been there. I think when people like Brene, my good friend Jim Hensel, who wrote a book called Grind Your Bee, The Quest for Purpose, he said this. He said, Colby, the right man, the right message at the right time can change the world. And I think that Brene and her study on wholeheartedness and shame and guilt and vulnerability, I think that she was the right woman at the right time with the right message, and it resonated. I love when she says, companies just need to understand that all they need to say is, hey, we screwed it up and we'll fix it. Yes. Yes. We screwed this up and we're going to fix it. How do you argue with that?
Exactly. You can't.
No, you can't. That's right. And so I don't, it's always been there. I think that, but I do agree with you in the sense that, we teach people to not be vulnerable. We teach people to armor it up. And in reality, if you look at, and I go back and I talk about Collins a lot, but he talks about level 5 leaders, and level 5 leaders have this strange combination of humility and will. And I look at Norman Joseph and what he did when we started that football team. he was one of the top offensive coordinators in the country. And now he's coaching this little NAIA program. And you talk about a strange combination of humility and will. I learned more in those 2 years about people, culture, team, adversity, success, confidence than I've learned in my entire life.
And what are some of the things that you took from that you now translate for other people?
Well, I mean, there's so many. My favorite, I've got, like I said, when we talked off mic, I mean, I could sit here and talk to you about this stuff all day. It's so fascinating to me, the human condition. But my favorite story from the school that I was at was that they bought a washer and dryer, a regular Maytag washer and dryer, to wash and dry 40 kids' football clothes, uniforms, pads, all that, the whole 9 yards. And so I did it all, including washing the clothes. So I was down there in the basement of this dormitory, and I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way. So I'm going to blow this washer up. So I put all the clothes in there. I turned on the washer. I got it to a point where it finally broke down. I called the guy and said, "Hey man, this washer doesn't work." "Well, we'll bring you another one." So they bring me another one. The whole time I'm like, "Hey, y'all really, we need an institutional washer." So they go through the same thing. Blow that one up too. Now this is where it gets funny. Then they decide that they're going to dry clean these football clothes. So they take it to a dry cleaner. The bill's like $14,000, and they decide to buy the industrial washer and dryer. Now here's the takeaway. Here's the takeaway. Here's the takeaway. Sometimes when you have a vision for the future, you got to keep going, even if other people can't see it. And so that is such a powerful moment that I learned, at Belhaven. When I have a Center for Student Coaching and Success at Middle Tennessee State University. One of my clients, John Floyd, who owns the largest independent home builder in the state of Tennessee, committed $1 million to it. And the vision is to help MTS. Now watch out, this is a novel idea, but to help MTSU students become gainfully employed in their chosen career path prior to walking across the stage at graduation. God forbid. God forbid that we help kids have gainful employment lined up before they graduate. I'm pretty sure that's what we should be doing on a daily basis.
Of course.
What I have figured out is that college kids come to college for one reason. They don't know it, but it's gainful employment. Employment's trading time for money. You don't have to go to college or any formal education to trade time for money. They can call me today. I'll set them up something to trade time for money. Gainful employment is where you get some kind of meaning, purpose, and contribution to the work that you do. And I believe that the only reason that kids, and they don't know this, go to college, go to any kind of formal education, is deep inside of them. They want some kind of gainful employment. We say all this stuff about the millennials, like they want meaning in their work. Well, didn't you?
Yep.
And didn't I? Here's the difference, Jen. We just didn't have the courage to ask for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the millennials get a lot of stuff pinned on them, and it's really not fair.
No, it's not fair, because at the end of the day, we wrote the script for those people. Here's what I figured out in my Center for Student Coaching and Success. People, millennials, us, it doesn't matter the generation. They want personal change, not necessarily personal development. You say, "Man, Colby, that sounds good. What does it mean?" Well, here's what it means. We don't even know what personal development is anymore. It's become such an expansive idea that we don't know what it is. But here's the simple piece on personal change. They want to change the narrative. They have either been given or written their own narrative. If you don't understand that narrative and help them create a new narrative, you cannot change them. And so we use narrative-based coaching, and we use Harrison assessment, and I believe that personal change happens through personal coaching and personal assessment. And so that's what I've spent the last 5 years building at MTSU, much like I spent the 2 years building that program at that small college where the washer and dryer, met their better days.
Do you think, as far as leadership goes, do you think that leadership is something that is inherent, or is it something that is learned?
Oh man, I think that boy, this is going to be the academic inside of me. Both. Now, I think that the more that you can identify what leadership is to you, here's what I think leadership is. Leadership to me is to affirm and validate the worth and potential of other people in such a clear way for the first time they can see it in themselves. It's a very humanistic approach to leadership. Once you understand that, then you ask yourself what activities, what relationships, what opportunities will help you engage in that kind of leadership. And so I think that the more that people can understand what leadership means to them, then the greater chance they have of becoming the leader they're supposed to become. But I think leadership, look no further than the military. The military, that's what they specialize. Army, Navy, Air Force, they specialize in creating leaders. And they have a scientific process that they use to do that. But we also know that leaders are also born too. So I think it's both.
And it would be one thing that I find, and that people that listen to the show or people that come to the blog send me notes and ask questions, and I find that people find themselves in situations of leadership that they were never prepared for, never trained for. They've worked their way up through some organization, starting off at the washing machine, and end up suddenly in charge of a whole bunch of people. And there are sort of images, everything comes with baggage, but there are images in our mind about what X is supposed to be. And so people try things on for size. But what do you say to somebody who suddenly walked into a position or suddenly has been promoted into this leader position who has not the first clue how to do it?
Well, I've been there. I know what that feels like, and I would tell you very quickly, you better get around people better than you. That's step number one when it comes to that. There's something that happens, this phenomenon that happens in business and in life and in careers, and it's called the Peter Principle. Are you familiar with it?
Yep.
So what you're describing is exactly what happens, is that we all rise to our highest level of incompetence. And that's where we stay. And I believe that the only way that you can move past that ceiling is through coaching. And I think we're in a coaching revolution that says you either are a coach, you have a coach, or you don't want to be coached. And if you don't want to be coached, you're going to be left behind. And so I think all of us find ourselves in that moment where we're not prepared, or we don't think we're prepared for leadership. But it reminds me of something that I think Rick Warren said that I think is so pertinent to what you're describing. He said, at some point in your life, you must decide whether you want to impress people or influence people. You can impress people from a distance, but you must get close to influence them. And when you do that, they'll be able to see your flaws. That's okay. The most essential quality for leadership is not perfection, but credibility. People must be able to trust you or they won't follow you. How do you build credibility? Not by pretending to be perfect, but by being honest. And so I think about my own life, and I think about the moments that I've been asked to lead, and how I've been vulnerable to say, challenge is great. What's in front of us is difficult, but the opportunity is also great.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that happens to all of us in all of our careers at some point along the way.
Yeah, my training, my formal education is a master's degree in leadership, and it doesn't matter how much schooling you have, because when you get out there, you actually have to do it.
Yeah.
And so even with all of that and lots of years of experience, there are always moments where you throw up your hands and say, I have no living idea what I'm supposed to do next.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think at that point, who you have in your container of trust is so important, because those are the people that you're going to turn to say, how there's this thing called excessive individualism. And it's a phenomenon that takes place where we say, okay, world, I'll show you and I'll do it all on my own. Don't do that. It'll cost you 2 years of your life. I know that because I've done it. The greatest shift I ever had in my life is when I went out and asked people a whole lot better than me, what are the biggest mistakes you made? Where did you really see a change along the way? And how did you do that? And so I think that's really important.
Is to gather those people around you that have been there, done that, and can mentor you a little bit.
Absolutely. Coach you.
Yeah.
We are in that coaching revolution. There's no doubt about it. I really believe that we all reach this level, of complexity in our lives. And if we don't have somebody that can walk us through that, then we'll just say, hey, this is it for me. This is where I'm supposed to be.
Do you think organizations are doing that now? Are they recognizing that leaders, people in management, people in leadership, people in influencing positions need that kind of support?
I do think so. I think that, Lencioni in his book, The Advantage, talks about organizational health is going to become the singular greatest advantage for companies in the world, around the world. And I think that companies that win today have a very clear sense of who they are. And so those companies that really understand this, here's what's going on. And again, this is some of the stuff that I've learned from my good friend Warren Brent, but there's this thing called agreed upon reality. And then there's this thing called agreed upon future. And the tension between the two is culture. And so those companies that can say, here's what's really going on here, and here's where we really want to go, and build a container of trust through culture that connects those two together, that's when you become unstoppable.
That's interesting, because one of the things that I talk about in my career coaching and in the helping people to figure out what they want to do is cultural fit. And that didn't used to be a consideration. Maybe it was, but it wasn't explicitly named in job postings and interview sessions, etc. And now we're teaching that you need to figure out whether or not in an interview setting that you are a cultural fit, not just for their sake, but for yours.
Well, I mean, Gladwell, I love Gladwell's stuff. He talks about the difference between IQ and circumstance and circumstances. And so to me, cultural fit is about the circumstances that you grew up in, birth order, socioeconomic status, who were your parents, and what kind of relationship. You really want to get into people when it comes to cultural fit. Here's the 4 questions that I want to know with cultural fit. Where are you from? What do you believe? What matters to you? And tell me about the relationship with your parents. You get somebody to tell you those 4 things, and you'll know real quick if they're a cultural fit. I'm from Mobile, Alabama. I consider Mobile the birthplace of greatness, the womb of greatness. I went to St. Paul's High School. We graduate people like A.J. McCarron and Jake Coker. That probably means nothing to you, but they're just national champion quarterbacks at the University of Alabama.
Okay.
So we play football down here. And so, Mobile is the birthplace of Mardi Gras, and I learned it very quickly. Either you can get in the parade or stand on the sidelines and watch. And I was never interested in standing on the sidelines and watch. I was always interested about being on the float. And so to get people to talk in those ways, to say, where are you from? It's such an insightful piece to understanding if they're going to fit culturally. So where are you from? What do you believe? I've shared some of the things that I believed with you today. I believe that helping people find their voice, the intersection of talent and passion and conscience and need in the world is such an incredible opportunity. And I think that's why we're here. My good friend Nate Schott says that we're put on this planet to become the people we're supposed to become in order to live the life we're supposed to live.
I preach that every Sunday.
Yeah, amen. And then my good friend Joe Calloway wrote a book called Be the Best at What Matters Most. And I called Calloway and I said, Calloway, the scary thing is your books are so good that you don't even need to read them because the title is really even better. He goes, I know, Colby, isn't that cool? Be the best at what matters most. The only strategy you ever need. Once you understand that, so let's just say that you and I are a business relationship. Hey, Jen, tell me what matters the most to you because I'm going to do that. That's going to be the filter for every decision that I make. And then, the last piece there about the relationship with your parents, you really want to see if somebody's a fit, understand their relationship with their parents. That'll help you dig right into where they are culturally. So I've been trained in Harrison assessment. Are you familiar with Harrison?
I've heard of it, but not familiar with it.
Well, cultural fit's a huge part of what they do. They measure behavior versus personality. Throw those personality tests out the window. You can't change people's personality. You can't change their behavior. Measure behavior, not personality.
There you go. So where can people find out more about you, Colby?
Well, my website has all the podcasts that I've been on, and so thankful to have the opportunity just to spend time with you. I love doing this. And so there's probably 10 or 15 others that I've done, but it's drjubenville.com, drjubenville.com. And then my Twitter is at Dr. Jubenville. And so those are probably the fastest places to get to me.
Perfect. So people can find you there, and we'll put that on the show notes at Careers by Jenn as well. And before we let you go, what is your last, maybe not your last, maybe your best piece of advice for the listener out there?
Yep. We spent a lot of time talking about leadership and success. And so I was driving down the road and I was listening to this CD, and they were talking about success, and this guy's talking about success, and he said, we look at success in so many different ways. For athletes, it's picking himself up off the ground just one more time. We talk about the continued expansion of happiness, the setting and achieving of worthy goals. These are all things that we talk about with success. But he said, when I think about success and I think about my life, he said, I think about Thoreau. And Thoreau said that success was about advancing confidently in the direction of your own dream, to endeavor to live a life that only you can imagine, where you will find uncommon success and common hour. And so I think about my own life and the opportunity to sit here on a computer and have this conversation while you're in Canada and I'm here in the center of the universe, Nashville, Tennessee. I think about how incredible it is that we both have the opportunity to advance confidently in the direction of our own dream. And so for the listener, the takeaway is pretty simple. Nobody can dream it up for you. You got to dream it up for yourself. And it starts with you saying, this is what I really want. This is what I really want. So I hope that people will advance confidently in the direction of their own dream and to endeavor to live a life that only they can imagine, where they will find uncommon success and common hour.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to share all that you have shared with us this recording.
Well, I've enjoyed it and would love to come back at any time. So you just let me know.
Great. You've been listening to Careers by Jenn with Jenn Swanson. If you like what you heard, please share this. If every single person listening today shared this episode with just one friend, our audience would be twice as big, just like that. And the more people we can help with our content, the better. So help out a friend and help grow our audience by sharing this show with someone you know who would benefit from the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, take good care.